It began with a single collision. Two pieces of metal meeting in low Earth orbit at thousands of miles per hour. Not a catastrophe in the moment, just a flash, a brief expansion of debris, dozens new fragments where two objects had been. But those fragments, each one carrying the energy of a hand grenade, traveling at orbital velocity, found other things to hit. And those collisions made more fragments, which made more collisions, which made more fragments. The cascade took 11 days to become unstoppable. It took 4 years to consume every functional satellite in orbit. And it took 1 generation for humanity to understand what it had lost. They tried to get through it. Of course they did. The first attempt, a hardened rocket shielded against debris impact, launched 18 months after the cascade began, was destroyed at 112 kilometers in altitude. The debris was already that low. The second attempt reached 80 kilometers. The third, 43. By the 7th attempt, the engineers understood something that others were not yet ready to accept. The shell was self-sustaining. Every rocket they launched added debris when it was destroyed, which thickened the shell, which destroyed the next rocket sooner, which added more debris. They were making it worse. The launches stopped. And for the first time in 100 years of spaceflight, Earth looked up and could not go there. The debris does not care about deadlines. It does not care about international agreements or rescue missions or the carefully worded statements of space agencies that had spent decades promising the problem was manageable. It simply continues. Collision producing fragment. Fragment producing collision. The cascade, feeding itself on the wreckage of everything humanity had put in orbit over 100 years. Communications satellites, weather satellites, navigation systems, Earth observation platforms. The International Space Station, unmanned by then, evacuated in the first weeks, struck and broken, and consumed, 1 module at a time, across 3 months. The GPS network slowly disappeared. Global satellite communications degraded for a decade, then silent. Weather forecasting, which had been accurate to 10 days by the mid-21st century, fell back to 3 days, then 1, then the horizon. Ships navigated by the old, almost forgotten methods. Aircraft flew shorter routes between ground-based radio beacons. Farmers read the sky with their eyes the way their great-grandparents had. It was not the end of civilization. It was the end of a certain kind of civilization, and the beginning of a different one. Losing something vast does not always produce only loss. Sometimes it produces focus. The energy that had sustained the global satellite infrastructure, the billions spent annually on launches, on maintenance, on the constant replacement of aging hardware, had to go somewhere. It went inward, not immediately. The first decades were genuinely difficult, a global economy built on satellite-dependent systems, restructuring itself around ground-based alternatives. But restructure it did, because that is what civilizations do. Fiber optic networks, already extensive by the time of the cascade, expanded rapidly. A global communications infrastructure, faster than satellite had ever been, entirely immune to orbital debris, laid in cables beneath the ground and the sea. The meteorological gap, the loss of weather satellites, drove the largest coordinated expansion of ground-based sensor networks in history. Hundreds of thousands of atmospheric monitoring stations deployed across every landmass and ocean. A weather prediction system built not from a view from above, but from 1 trillion data points at ground level, feeding models that, within 50 years, matched and the accuracy that satellites had provided. The navigation gap drove something more unexpected: a global investment in fundamental physics. Without GPS, the world needed timing systems of extraordinary precision, systems that didn't depend on satellites synchronizing atomic clocks from orbit. The solution was quantum. Quantum clocks, accurate to 1 second in 14 billion years, deployed in networked pairs across the globe, using quantum entanglement to synchronize without any signal needing to travel between them. The research required to build those clocks produced, as a side effect, the first practical quantum computing systems, which produced within 2 decades the computational power required to finally crack controlled nuclear fusion. The cascade that took space away from humanity also, inadvertently, gave it something else. The universe does not issue refunds, but occasionally it issues unexpected change. By the year 2200, 150 years after the cascade, Earth was a different world. Not unrecognizable, but different in the way that a river is different after a century. The same water, the same banks, but the course has shifted and the landscape around it has changed to match. The civilization had stabilized, not through catastrophe, through the particular choices that become available to people who have enough energy, food, and security to make them. 11 billion people, comfortable, fed by ocean farms that produced food at scales that land agriculture had never matched without displacing a single additional hectare of wild habitat. The wild habitat was returning. The forests that had been cleared across the 20th and 21st centuries were growing back, not the same as what had been there before, but growing. The atmosphere was cooling, slowly, imperfectly. Not a complete reversal. The carbon was still there. It would take centuries more to fully clear. But the curve had bent. The temperature rise had stopped. And the cities had gone deep. Not as bunkers. As genuine urban environments, cool, lit by full-spectrum light that mimicked the sun, growing food in vertical forests that lined their underground corridors, designing living spaces that did not require weather to be pleasant or sky to be open or anything above them to be accessible. By the year 2300, the word astronaut existed only in historical texts. Children learned about the space age the way their ancestors had learned about the age of sail, as something people had once done with tools that seemed primitive in retrospect, for reasons that made sense at the time. Not with contempt, not with nostalgia. With the mild, interested curiosity of a student encountering something genuinely past. The moon was still visible. Every night. A pale disk in a sky that nobody looked at the way their ancestors had, because looking up for 200 years had meant looking at something unreachable. And the human mind is very efficient at redirecting its desires toward things that can actually be obtained. The astronomers still worked, a small community, carrying the old knowledge with the particular dedication of people who do a thing because it matters to them, regardless of whether it matters to anyone else. They watched the debris shell through ground-based telescopes. They published papers on its evolution, the slow orbital decay of the lowest fragments, the complex collision dynamics of the mid-shell, the strange relative stability of the uppermost layer where the debris was too sparse to sustain a high collision rate, but too dense to safely pass through. They measured, they documented, they published, and they noted in papers that very few people read that the lowest debris, in the very bottom of the shell, where atmospheric drag slowly bled their orbital velocity, was very gradually coming down, In 300 years, or 400, the bottom of the shell would thin. It would take the time. And the civilization below the shell had learned, over centuries, that some things simply take the time they take. 300 years. It is difficult to hold that number in the mind as a human duration. 300 years ago, from the moment of the cascade, Newton had been dead for 50 years. Mozart had not yet been born. The American Republic was not yet a decade old. 300 years is the distance between the sailing frigate and the aircraft carrier, between the first steam engine and the nuclear reactor. In 300 years, humanity had not simply adapted to the loss of space. It had built an entirely different relationship with the planet it had always lived on, a relationship that previous generations would not have recognized. The instinct to expand, outward, upward, beyond, had not disappeared from the species. It had redirected. Downward into the ocean floors, where pressurized habitat networks now housed research communities studying ecosystems that the surface world had barely mapped. Inward into the complexity of biological systems, of medicine, of genetic science, of neuroscience, driven by computational power that the fusion quantum revolution had made, and microscopic, into the very small, into the structures of matter itself, into a physics that did not require leaving the planet to explore. The frontier had not closed. It had simply changed its direction. The debris shell is still there. 300 years after the cascade, the orbital band that once carried humanity's satellites, its stations, its ambitions, its gaze outward, is still filled with fragments, still self-sustaining, still moving at orbital velocity, still occasionally producing new collisions as fragments meet in the complex ballet of decaying orbits. The civilization below the shell have a world. It is enough for now.